students watching and boys and girls in our classroom, we're ready to begin our activity lesson. Now, in our last activity lesson, we started to really look at our globe. And remember, our globe shows us something. What does the globe show us, students watching? And what does our globe show us, Savvy?
Our states and our worlds and our country.
It does. It shows us everything. It shows us our world. In fact, we'll take a moment and we'll put our globe up. And as I spin this globe around, you can see many different things, can't you? One of the first things I see is there's a lot of blue on my globe. What does the blue stand for on my globe, Aslan?
Water.
It is. And there is a lot of water. In fact, how many oceans are there, students watching? And how many oceans are there, Titus?
5.
There are 5 oceans. Well, I don't just see the water, but I also see all kinds of different colors. What do those colors stand for, Trey?
For states.
That's right, for states and for countries and even for really big pieces of land. What are the really big pieces of land called, Benjamin?
Continents.
Continents is it. And how many continents are there, Hayden?
7.
There are 7 continents. Now let's take just a moment and let's look at our continents to see the way they look on our globe. Now, why is my globe this shape of a sphere, Tanner?
Because that's the world shape.
It is. That's the way the world would look if I were an astronaut looking down from outer space. So I'm going to say the continent. You be ready to say it after me. Here we go. North America.
North America.
South America.
South America.
Africa.
Africa.
Europe.
Europe.
Asia.
Asia.
We'll keep spinning our globe. Here's Australia.
Australia.
At the very bottom, I even have to tip my globe up to get to this continent, Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Now, I've got a thinking question. Why is Antarctica white on my globe? What is the reason for that, Emery?
Because there's snow.
That's right, there's so much snow and there's so much ice. Do we have people who live in Antarctica all of the time, Aria? No, it's too cold for people to live there all of the time. But all of the rest of my continents have people who live there all of the time. Now, I need somebody who can come find our country, the United States of America. Before they come up, students watching, do I have my globe on the side for our country, the United States of America? Oh, okay, they're saying no. So, Aslan, why don't you come up to the front? It looks like we're going to have to spin our globe. Do you remember the continent that our country is on, Hayden?
America.
That's right, it's North America. She's spinning, she's spinning. Look at that. Students watching, do you agree with Aslan? They said, yes, Aslan, give them a nice smile because they agreed with you and your good work. Wonderful. So right here is our country, the United States of America. It's on the continent of North America. And I want you to notice something. Remember the directions we talked about and remind me what our directions are. Boys watching, answer with Tanner. What are our directions? Be a little louder for our boys watching to check their answers.
North, south, east, west.
That's it. So if we go to the north from our country, do you remember the name of our neighbor country to the north, girls watching? And what is the name of our neighbor country to the north, Ava?
Canada.
It is. It's called the country of Canada. Well, in just a little bit, we're going to be taking a trip to the country of Canada, and we're going to meet somebody who lives there. But before we do that, let's come over to our map on our screen. Now, why does our map on our screen look different? Students watching, give me a reason why it looks different from my globe. And Benjamin, why does it look different from my globe? What's the difference?
Because your author split the world in half and they flattened it out.
Absolutely. So our illustrator, the person who drew this map, they split it in half and then they flatten it out so that we're able to see it on our nice flat screen. I need somebody who can come up and help me find North America again. Ava, I think I saw your eyes right away. Come up to the front, point to North America. Students watching, you find North America before Ava does. Oh, I don't know if they could. She was so very fast. Wonderful job. And Ava, you can have a seat. Why is North America important? What country is in North America? Aria? You're in it. Where are we?
Mexico.
Well, we have the cities and states, don't we? But what's our big country called? The United
States.
of America is it. And if we look right over here where Ava pointed to, she saw a direction that said our continent, North America, and then we have our country, the United States of America. Well, we're just about ready to take a trip to this country. And remind us again of our neighbor country to the north. Aslan, what's its name?
Canada.
That's it, it's Canada. Before we take our trip to Canada, I want you to notice something about Canada. On this side of Canada, which is what direction? What direction is this for the country of Canada? Titus?
East.
It's to the east. To the east of Canada, we have this ocean the same as us. What is this ocean, Benjamin?
African Ocean.
You're really close. It's called the Atlantic Ocean. What is it called?
Atlantic.
Yes, this is the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is east to the country of Canada. If we come to this direction, which is the opposite of east, what direction is the opposite of east, Savvy? I have
West.
That's it. I have north, south, east, and then west. On the western side of Canada, I have a different ocean. I'll give you a clue. It is the world's largest ocean. Girls watching, answer what ocean that is. And what ocean is the world's largest ocean, Trey? Did you get it, girls watching? This one's a hard one. Let me help you, Trey. It's the Pacific Ocean. What is it?
Pacific Ocean.
I'll say it. You say it after me. Pacific Ocean.
Pacific Ocean.
Yes, and to the west of Canada is the Pacific Ocean. But there's something I want you to notice about Canada. Can you see how it looks kind of rough and jagged around the outside edges of Canada? In just a moment, I'm going to tell you why. But that's something called coastline. A coastline is where land meets water. And Canada has so much land that meets water because it has the Atlantic Ocean, it has the Pacific Ocean, and even look in there. Do you see the water that's in the middle of Canada? There are lakes. Canada has so many lakes. So do you think that people from Canada enjoy things that have to do with the water? What do you think, students watching? And what do you think, Savvy? They have so much water around them. Do you think they enjoy it? Stand to answer and tell our students watching.
Yes.
Yes, they do. They have a lot of things they like to do with water. Well, if we look at our map right here, we can see our country, the United States of America. Now, remember in our last lesson, we were at these islands. Who remembers the name of the islands where we visited in our last activity lesson? Ava?
The Bahamas.
That's right. We went to the Bahamas. Did we have a nice time, Ava?
Yes.
Yes, we enjoyed that sunshine. We enjoyed the water. Why was there so much water at the Bahamas, Emery? What type of land are the Bahamas? Remember what it's called, students watching? That's right, they're islands. They're pieces of land completely surrounded by water. Well, if we went from the Bahamas to Canada, what direction did we just travel, Victoria? So here we are in the Bahamas, but now we're moving to our next country. What direction is that? Do you remember, students watching? Let's help out Victoria. What direction did we just travel, Hayden? North. Now we've got a thinking question for you, Victoria. We had such a good time in the Bahamas because it was really warm. But now we're traveling north. Is my weather going to be warmer or colder than the Bahamas?
Colder.
It is, because when I travel to the north, that means my weather gets colder. Good job, Victoria. Now, if you look at my map, you can see that I have a certain city that I have in red. That is the city of Toronto, and Toronto is the capital of the country of Canada. Now, Canada is a special country to us. For one reason, it's our neighbor to the north, but we could also drive up to Canada to be able to go and visit. Can we drive to the Bahamas, the country we visited in our last lesson, Benjamin? Could we get in our car and drive there? Why not?
Because it's island.
It is. It's completely surrounded by water. That would be a lot of bridges, and those bridges wouldn't be that big. But you can see that Canada is connected by land to the United States of America. Now, something else that makes Canada special is the fact that they have 2 languages that are their official languages. Now, do you know what language we speak here in the United States of America? Students watching, why don't you tell me? And Titus, you know, what's our language we speak? We speak it, we're used to it. Did you know it's called the language of English? English is the language that we speak in the United States of America. Why don't we say that? English?
English.
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 Well, we speak the language of English here in the United States of America, and in Canada, they speak English as well. But there's also a very special part. It's called a province. It's almost like a state that has another official language of French. So they speak both English and French in the country of Canada, many of the people that live there. Now, the name Canada is thought to have come from a Native American word. It's an Iroquois word that means village or it means settlement. And Canada and the United States, we have a very special friendship, and here's why. We have the longest border. That means the place where our countries meet than of any two other countries. So the border, the place we meet between the United States and Canada, it's the longest of any two other countries. Now remember, we looked at Canada and we saw all of the water that surrounded it. Canada has the longest coastline. Remember, that's where the land meets the water. It has 125,000 miles of coastline. So they do have a lot of water that's around them. And they have the most lakes of any country. They have over 32,000 lakes there in the country of Canada. Well, we're going to meet this little girl who lives in Canada. Her name is Victoria, and we're going to travel around with Victoria and see some of the places that we're going to get to visit there in Canada. Now, again, let's notice our map that shows Canada. Canada is our neighbor country to the north, and can't you see clearly all of that coastline? Where the land meets the water, there's so much of it. There's over 125,000 miles of coastline. Here is that capital city of Toronto, and this tower, it's very tall. It's called the CN Tower. We'll see another picture of it soon. Right here you can see something really beautiful. It's called Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is actually one of the border places of the United States and Canada. So you can see these beautiful waterfalls whether you're in America or you're in the country of Canada. And right here are some very special officers. They're called Canadian Mounties, and a little bit we'll talk about what these Mounties do. We said that the people who live in Canada, they love sports that have to do with water. And they live in a place where it's cold. It's in the north. So that water turns into something. Name something that water turns into when it gets cold. Students watching. And what can water turn into, Aslan?
Ice.
That's it. And right here, we see a sport that people from Canada love to play. They love to ice skate and they love to play ice hockey. Now, here are some animals that you could see if you visit the country of Canada. One is this moose right here. I see a polar bear. Why do polar bears live in Canada, Trey?
Because they like being cold.
They love being cold, and it's cold in the country of Canada. And then down here, isn't this beautiful? These are called the Rocky Mountains. That's something else that we share with Canada. There's part of the Rocky Mountains that come in the United States of America, and then part of them travel up into the country of Canada. Now, if you see this, this is called the Canadian flag. Remember, a flag just represents or stands for that country. So the red and the white with this beautiful leaf called the maple leaf in the center is the Canadian flag. Now, we said that Canada was cold because it's to the north, right? There are parts of Canada that their average daily temperature, that means when it's the hottest, when it's the coldest, they take the in-between temperature, is 5 degrees in the winter. Now, we haven't talked about degrees and thermometers yet, but let me tell you something. Miss Howe would get very cold at 5 degrees, and I think you would too. That is very chilly. That is lower than what water takes to freeze into ice. So it's very cold in some parts. Some parts of Canada have snow 6 months out of the year, and other places, they have snow all of the time. Now, they're a special country because they're called the Commonwealth. They're part of something called the Commonwealth. There are nations that view Queen Elizabeth of England as their leader. Now, if you look right here, we can see a gorgeous picture of Canada. First thing I see is that Canadian flag with that maple leaf right in the center, and then I see some of the mountains. Canada is known for its mountains and lots of snow. Now, Canada also has the northernmost settlement of any place in the world. It's called the Canadian Forces Station Alert. It is about 500 miles from the North Pole. So do you think it's hot or is it cold at this settlement, this station, Benjamin? It's the most to the north of any place that people live all of the time. Is it hot or cold?
Cold.
It is. It's very cold there. Well, my next picture is showing you part of Niagara Falls. We saw a little bit of that when we met Victoria. Remember, Niagara Falls is part of the United States of America, and part of it is in Canada. Now, if you're on the Canadian side, it's called Horseshoe Falls, but it's really the exact same waterfall. This is a picture of Hudson Bay. Hudson Bay is a great big piece of water that is found next to Canada. Remember, Canada has the most coastline of any country. Now, you're going to see some illustrations of things that Canada is known for. One thing is wheat. In the middle, their provinces, they grow a lot of wheat, and those wheat, it's used to make pancakes like this. Over here, we see that maple leaf, just like the flag we see for Canada. They're known for having their maple trees, and from those maple trees, they're going to make what's on top of these pancakes. Maple syrup, something that I like to eat, and I think you probably do too. Here's a picture of those beautiful mountains, the Canadian Rocky Mountains. And right here, we can again see the capital city called Toronto. Notice this great big tower called the CN Tower. The CN Tower is about 1,825 feet tall. So it is a very big tower that you can see in many parts of Toronto. Now, this is a very special flower called a poppy. In Canada, they celebrate a special day called Poppy Day. They do it in the month of November. And they wear poppies to remember those who have died in wars to keep them free, because Canada has many freedoms like we do here. Now, Poppy Day is based on a poem that was written a long time ago during World War I. Now, we saw a little bit of an illustration of wheat, but here's a real picture of some Canadian wheat. Those wheat fields are right in the middle of Canada, and they're called the Plains Provinces. Again, a province is like a state. And there's lots of wheat that's grown there to make those good, delicious pancakes. Now, this is a picture of a maple tree. Lots of maple trees are in Canada because they like that nice cold weather. Now, from the maple tree, you see these buckets? They're doing something special. They're collecting the sap from inside of the maple tree, and you can see some dripping off that little spigot, that spout. Maple sap is clear until they boil it and boil it and boil it to make this right here, maple syrup, which is delicious on those pancakes. Now, Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories. And you can also see these special lights called the Aurora Borealis. You can see that in the north sky all the way up to the north. Now, the official sports of Canada are ice hockey and also another sport called lacrosse. And the people love to ski because there's so much snow there in Canada. Another favorite sport is, of course, ice skating. It's so cold and they've got a lot of water. Now, this is called the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or sometimes we call them the Mounties. They were formed more than 100 years ago, and they do almost all of the police work, especially in really small towns. Now, I want you to notice right here a picture of a very special type of Native American. It's called an Inuit. And Inuit people live up in the north of Canada and also in our state of Alaska. They came up with something really special that we still use today called the kayak boat. They use it to hunt whales and seals, and here we can see an Inuit dad working with his daughter, making a smaller kayak boat. And there's a beautiful kayak boat that you can see in a museum in Canada. I like the designs they painted on it. Now, they have a very special type of coat on called a parka. And that parka kept them nice and warm. Maybe some of our students watching, you might wear a parka like the Inuit people. This is fun. Mama Inuits, they would have parkas with a really special pocket, a place right below the hood. That would be a place they could carry their babies to keep them warm and safe. Now, this is just another picture of a little Inuit girl who has on her parka to keep her warm. This is a place that they might live in, but a lot of times we think of an igloo, don't we? The Inuit people would live in an igloo during the winter and tents during the summer. Here's another picture of them inside an igloo, and some of them also would take sod houses and make them. They use sled dogs to get around because of all of the snow, and those sled dogs would help them get places. Now, here's something you can see in Canada, some Canadian geese, even their babies. There's the Canadian beaver. That's the national animal of Canada, and they actually make something very special out of twigs. It will stop some of the water, and this is called a lodge. The lodge will be covered in mud, and it freezes during that cold winter time, but the beaver stays safe. This moose can weigh over 1,500 pounds, and its antlers can be 6 feet wide. And then polar bears, they love those polar bears because they love that north cold weather. Here's our last picture. It's a picture similar to a place called Mount Logan. This is close to it in Canada. It's the highest mountain, and many Canadian people and people from around the world will climb the top of Mount Logan. Now this is Mount Robson, but in places in Mount Logan, the snow will be up to 240 inches deep. Students watching, I hope you enjoyed taking a trip to Canada with us.